Rex the Runt was Aardman's first attempt at making something explicitly adult, and while yes, Creature Comforts was a bit more matured compared to Wallace and Gromit and Morph, a child could still watch it and enjoy it. Rex the Runt, on the other hand, was something that Aardman made specifically for adult viewing, and while the content of the show is certainly not as raunchy or morbid as something you would see in a Viz comic or on Adult Swim, it is something that manages to be an adult show, but still manages to incorporate the great charm and non-threatening style of Aardman that has been the backbone of its company since the beginning. As I hinted in the Creature Comforts episode, Rex's design was first shown in the lip sync episode Ident, and given how insane and terrifying that short was, it was nice to have a familiar face to see in all that nightmare. Actually, I hesitate to call this nightmare fuel because this is eerily similar to what my nightmares actually look like, just with less man-eating whales and university flashbacks. Rex the Runt is a show about 4 plasticine dogs, the titular neurotic Rex.
Hello, I'm Rex, and welcome to my world. Scanning the financial pages, and it says that if you're smart, you can make the money work for you.
The sarky and mellow Wendy.
Been around since the war.
That wouldn't make him that old in cartoon dog years. Bob, I have to tell you this. You're a big, fat, jelly, wobbly, fat bastard, Bob.
The large but kind and simple bad Bob.
Tell me our coordinates.
Over the Pacific. There you are.
What time is it?
Dinner time.
How much fuel we got left?
We're gonna run out now.
And the crazy Vince.
Clenches. It's just like Butlins. Thomas had a headache.
La 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 la.
Oh, won't you please surrender?
And the plots are kind of hard to describe since the writing style is all over the place in the series, but the best way I can describe it is imagine Ed's World but a bit more subdued and with stop motion animation. The best I can do to describe it is that it's a show where the 4 characters are running their own TV show and basically try to make as many surreal jokes and comedy setups that they can, regardless of if it makes sense or not, but does it in a way that is a lot more accessible than you might think. Rex himself is the brainchild of Richard, however you pronounce his last name, who had previously worked on the first Robbie the Reindeer short film, which did have a very similar sense of humour, and also explains why Wendy has boobs, since it seems to be a trait of his animation style. And while he did work with Aardman before, this was his first attempt to make something that was truly all his own. And it's interesting how much of his sense of humour is different from Park and Lord's. The show used a lot of surreal and meta humour, though unlike Basil Brush, the whole show was done with a very slow and calm style, so it's definitely something that you could watch with your slippers up on a buffet with a cup of tea. And its tone and pace is one that I wish more adult shows would go with. Don't get me wrong, I love the next hyperactive, gory and insane Adult Swim show as much as the next guy, but sometimes it's nice just to have a calm, relaxing tone while still having some naughty jokes. Simply put, if Adult Swim is like watching Robin Williams or George Carlin do stand-up, Rex the Runt is like watching Eddie Izzard or Ricky Gervais do stand-up.
And that's fucking weird too, and there's been porn for centuries. Was there radio porn? Was there George Burns going, well, teabag me, Gracie? I don't know.
90% of all the species that have ever lived on this planet, are gone. They're extinct. We didn't kill them all.
And we built up empires. We stole countries. That's what you do. That's how you build an empire. We stole countries with the cunning use of flags.
Everything was peaceful. Everything beautiful. God made human beings too. And he wanted them to be good like himself. Arrogant.
The sense of humour in Rex the Runt can be so random and bizarre that it reminded me a lot of Monty Python, and like I said in last year's Aardmay, Aardman would eventually adopt this sense of humour into their films, as I said that the Pirates movie had a very similar sense of humour, but it was nowhere near as insane as this. But part of the reason that the humour works so well is how subdued and almost monotone the characters' voices are. It makes it seem like they're totally unimpressed with all the madness that goes on in their daily lives, which is something that, again, really works with how British and low-key the tone of this show is in contrast to the high-concept writing and animation. It's that perfect collision of the two completely opposite ends of the spectrum that Aardman always does so well. Also, a few cameos from other Aardman characters and famous actors and comedians is always a treat.
Oh! Don't even think about it.
So these 3 dogs went into a pub. The first one was a husky. Oh no, that's not right. They were in a boat.
Keep going straight and don't look back. The horror. The horror. And don't hog the middle lane.
My first TV special was live. Oh, yes. To stay youthful, you've got to have spiritual discipline. Look at this.
Granted, the sense of humour in Rex the Runt is very particular, and not everyone is going to get it. Hell, in some cases even I don't get it. But much like anything else Aardman makes, the visual appeal really helps compensate sometimes for the writing, and given how outlandish Rex the Runt can be with its animation and visual style, that suits me perfectly, since at least you've got something interesting to look at even if you don't agree with the jokes or dialogue. That being said, while the fluency and craft of the animation is as great as always, in fact the smooth and fluid motions of the animations is almost too good for a TV show. The design of the models is very different than usual, in that the characters are almost completely two-dimensional, but that actually works for this show, since it adds to the surreality and gives it more of a sense of being a wacky cartoon, since fully 3D detailed models might have been a contrast with the sense of humour. They also use some real-life objects, or at least some very real-looking facsimiles, in the show's animation, which I think is the first time Aardman ever did that, with the exception of Morph, but that's just because it was set on a desktop, and the Peter Gabriel music video for Sledgehammer, of course, which Richard I headbutted my typewriter to come up with my last name also worked on. It's a show where the writers are really just having a laugh and don't care about consistency or making sense, which to me is summed up by how Bob's eye patch keeps switching sides between every scene. But because of that, combined with its more laid-back feel, it feels like a show you can just put on any time, and it's got a great sense of enjoyment and fulfillment to it, regardless of what episode it is. It's like a stop-motion TV version of a newspaper comic strip in that regard, though unlike a comic strip, there is some continuity between some episodes, which is a bit of an odd choice for a show like this, but it does work, and the show really isn't about story, it's about jokes. So really you could watch it at any point and not really need to understand what's going on, unlike comic books or sci-fi shows. Overall, while Rex the Runt is a show that is really hard to describe what exactly it is, and even more hard to say if you would actually like it, I'd still recommend you check it out. Even though it is weird, I bet that there's something in it that will intrigue you. And if I'm wrong, I am happy to reimburse you.
£10, all right?